In this whole massive debate around AI, something really weird has happened. Two groups that are usually total enemies have suddenly found themselves on the exact same side. To figure out why, we've got to look at this historical pattern that the source material calls the Vulgar Script. Let's dive in.
So let's just start with this quote because it really sets the stage for everything. It frames this whole debate not as some technical squabble, but as a fight over who gets control, who gets access. So who exactly are they, and what is this machinery of intelligence? Well, that's what we're here to unpack. Okay, so Section 1, a strange alliance. And it really is a strange one. We're talking about two groups who are normally at each other's throats, but now they've found common ground on one of the biggest issues of our time.
All right, so let's set the stage. On one side, you've got the hacker ethos, right? The whole information wants to be free mantra, everything decentralized and open. And on the other side, you've got big tech, centralized, proprietary, all about control. They pretty much clash on everything, except it turns out AI.
And here it is. This is their bizarre common ground. They've landed on the exact same conclusion, just for totally different reasons. The hackers, they look at AI-generated stuff and call it slop. They think it's just low-quality junk that devalues real human skill. Big tech, they're all about safety, saying the public just can't be trusted with these powerful tools. But look at the end result. It's the same. Exclusion. Both of them agree these powerful models should be kept out of your hands.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. The source material argues this is not a new phenomenon. Not at all. This impulse to lock away a new world-changing technology, it's a pattern that's repeated itself throughout history. And to get what's at stake today, we need to take a little trip back in time.
Which brings us to Section 2, History's Vulgar Scripts, and it's all about looking to the past to figure out what's happening right now.
Think about it. For literally centuries, the keys to, well, everything, law, science, philosophy, they were locked up, kept behind these massive barriers. In the West, that barrier was Latin. If you didn't know it, you were out of the loop. But in the East, they had an even more effective gatekeeper, Chinese characters.
So what does that even mean? Well, unlike an alphabet, with just a couple dozen letters you have to learn, a logographic system is, it's a whole other beast. To read even a simple text, you had to memorize thousands and thousands of totally unique symbols. It's just a monumental task.
And we're not talking about a few years of school here. No way. We're talking about decades. Literally a lifetime of study, which meant it was only accessible to this tiny aristocratic elite that had the time and the money for that kind of education.
And here it is, the absolute core of the argument. The difficulty, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a bug. It was a feature. The whole system was designed to be a filter, to make sure knowledge and with it power stayed in the hands of a very, very small group of people. They essentially had a monopoly on what was considered reality.
Okay, so what happens when this kind of system gets challenged? Well, the world basically split, and it led to two completely different fates for the East and the West.
So here's the fork in the road. In the West, things like the printing press and the Reformation came along, and the gatekeepers of Latin, well, they lost. The vulgar, and that just means common, languages took over. But in the East, the exact opposite happened. The elites managed to keep control, suppressing simpler scripts to maintain the purity of the complex system.
And wow, the consequences of that split, they are just staggering when you lay them out. The West, it was pure chaos for a while. Wars, upheaval, you name it. But all that noise, that was the sound of a society learning, and it led straight to the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution. The East, on the other hand? It was all about purity and order. But the price for that order was steep. It was the intellectual disarmament of an entire population, which made them vulnerable to something as catastrophic as the Cultural Revolution.
And this quote, man, it just hits so hard. It explains the tragedy perfectly. The very elites who spent centuries protecting culture from the masses ended up creating a population that was so cut off from that culture that they could be tricked into destroying it completely. They burned the books in the temples because they'd never been given the tools to understand why they mattered in the first place.
All right, so that's the history lesson, and it brings us crashing right back to today. Are we facing that same choice again? The choice between intellectual disarmament and a whole lot of slop?
So think about it. When you hear big tech talking about AI safety, what are they really trying to sell you? What they're really pushing for, according to this argument, is the intellectual disarmament of the public. It's the same old pattern. They want to be the new high priests, the ones who give us carefully sanitized, controlled access to this new kind of intelligence.
So, here we are. The players in our modern drama are set. You've got big tech as the new priesthood, controlling the gates. And the hacker community, at least according to this source, they've become the aesthetic snobs, looking down their noses at the messy, imperfect stuff the rest of us create, the slop.
And this is maybe the most important takeaway. The whole "we need to keep you safe" argument, it doesn't actually lead to safety, it does the opposite. If you disarm a population intellectually, you don't get a safe society. You get a society of children, a population that can be manipulated on a scale we've never even imagined because they were never allowed to learn, to experiment, to mess up, and to build up an immunity to bad ideas.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative question. Look, nobody's saying this slop isn't annoying. It is. This flood of AI content can be pretty awful. But if we decide the solution is to lock the tools away from everyone to prevent that, what's the alternative we're really choosing?
And that's the choice the source material leaves us with. It's a stark one. On one side, you have the noise of a population learning. It's chaotic, it's messy, it's often frustrating. And on the other, you have the clean, orderly, and absolutely terrifying silence of a population that was denied the chance to learn at all. The silence of the graveyard. That's really what's at stake. And that's the thought we'll leave you.